Almost sounds more like conscription, what you're describing, than...
It's very similar.
This question comes from Carolyn Hayes. Should we bring back national service?
Yes. I can see you grimace, Maddie. I used to think that bringing back as a political exercise was a easy but flawed reactionary impulse. Bring back grammar schools, bring back matron, bring back corporal punishment, and so on. But I think that there is a case for national service that I don't think I would have found myself making even 5 years ago. The first thing, I think, is simply the parlous state of our defences. I think it requires emergency measures.
So in your mind, it would be similar to the national service that existed until 1957?
Oh, yes.
Military style?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So I know that there was at the last election, the suggestion that there should be alternatives. And of course, you will always have people who will be conscientious objectors, people who will have medical exemptions and so on. But I think that the nature of the threat we face, the need to build a more resilient society, the need to build a more cohesive society, all of them are served by the principle that for 2 years, all young adult males should contribute to uniformed service in this country.
So it only apply to men?
Yes.
So women exempt, or do they do something different as a form of national service?
There should be other opportunities. I readily accept that there should be a greater degree of flexibility offered. But I think that the need for us to strengthen our armed forces is there. The need overall to bring people, and this was behind David Cameron's idea of national citizen service, out of their comfort zones, out of communities, to create a spirit of common endeavour, I think is worthwhile. I think that it can be achieved differently. And I know that people will say, well, we've already got, effectively integrated armed forces. Well, that in itself has been problematic in a number of areas. So my view would be that for men, it's, unless an exemption can be found, a uniform service. For women, there should be a wider range of options, but that you do have to demonstrate a commitment to building the country's resilience and to contributing to the country's common good for a period. And we can tie it in different ways, perhaps to investment in someone's education as well. I know that the armed forces professionally say that this is not an augmentation of their strengths, but a diversion of their time, resources, and energy. But I think that the lesson of the past is that we need to create that cohesion. And again, and this will probably only make me even more unpopular, this is the situation that Israel faces. This is the position that Israel embraces. Now, of course, this is a country that faces an existential threat from all of its neighbours. But I think that the heightened security risks that we face mean that it's definitely worth contemplating, if not embracing.
It almost sounds more like conscription, what you're describing, than
it's very similar.
National service. I mean, the thing is that these questions may, if we continue to neglect our military to the extent that we have, this may become an academic question. We may need to have conscription for basic survival. It's just such an indictment of political class for the last few decades. I'm very against the idea that there was a moment ahead of the last general election, which I felt was the real nadir of utter shamelessness. When you had on the one side, Rishi Sunak just conjured up the kind of boomer fantasy of national service to animate the increasingly older voters that were still choosing his party.
Worked for me.
Yes. Although, alas, not in Surrey Heath.
No.
Touche. But at the same time, you had Keir Starmer's party promising to give 16-year-olds the vote.
Yes.
Just like the most shameless gerrymandering. Like really, real kind of shamelessness on both sides. I think with the level of, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but the intergenerational contract is already pretty ravaged as it is. And I do think there may be an element where it's like, well, maybe we can talk about your pension's triple lock, not you, but one. And then we'll talk about, a form of indentured labour by young people.
Yeah.
And by the way, hardly anyone alive today did national service. My dad's 85; he was too young for it.
Yeah,
You know,
you are right that, as presented at the last election, even though I was very supportive of it, it did seem as though it was part of a sort of concerted attempt to further alienate anyone under the age of 25.
Yeah. In the hope that that's what would animate the the core vote. Like it was an idea that had just come out of nowhere and had no real elucidation behind it, even though managing such a scheme would be a huge undertaking. And we can't really get the basics right in our military at the moment. So, you know,
it did seem as though some of the drunken meanderings at a Freemasons festive board somewhere in Staffordshire had found their way into the Conservative manifesto. That had become the guiding national purpose for a fifth Conservative term. However, I think that while it is the case that there will be some people who will have a nostalgia streak, a get-some-in obsession, as it were, I do think, even if my notion of it is too hard-edged, that thinking about how we can create a more resilient country, given the nature of the threats that we face, is a good thing. And I also think that having institutions that promote social mixing and people coming out of their communities is a good thing. And I think, if it was the case that a 19, 20 or 21-year-old from Bradford or Birmingham had to be in the same core unit team as an 18, 19 or 21-year-old from Tewkesbury or Richmond upon Thames, then I don't think that would be a bad thing. And I think that if they were engaged in anything from strengthening the cyber defences of our country through to assisting the civil power in times of, floods and other domestic crises, I think that would be a good thing. And the countries which are hard up against Russia, the Baltics, Finland, Poland, they've had to cultivate a greater degree of resilience. And the threats that we face as a nation go beyond Russian ships in the English Channel. They extend to the way in which those who wish us ill can dismantle our infrastructure in other ways. So I think it is necessary to take dramatic steps to prepare ourselves better for these risks. And to those who would say that my ideas are, soaked in nostalgia, I don't think they are. But if that's true, then what is the alternative way of making sure that the country is more resilient and prepared for the chillier 21st century that we live in?
I imagine there would have to be some financial sacrifices to cover a scheme like this.
Well, yes.
There would be some difficult choices, and maybe it's right that we make those. But I think a lot of young people feel in part that they have less of a stake in society because of the way that conditions have been made worse for them. Tax conditions, debt repayment, the interest on student loans is insane now, actually insane. Even people earning a very good salary are still drowning in interest. That amid this backdrop, to suddenly bring this in, I think it's highly unlikely that a government of the right, which would be the only one that would probably do something like this, would actually have the guts to say, sorry, the pensions triple lock is not sustainable anymore, or whatever it would take.
No. I think
fear
you're
that
right.
It would become a further thing that would alienate generations.
I think you would need to revisit the generational compact, and I think you might need to say either, yes, the pensions triple lock might need to be revisited. Also, you might need to say, well, we're going to have to change the way in which we provide housing in this country.
Yeah.
And the ability of people who are sitting on nest eggs in communities where they can veto new development, their ability to veto that development might have to go in order to allow more people onto the housing ladder. Yes, I think that it can't be visited entirely on its own. But that takes us to a broader point, which is the only way I think that we can deal with the manifest ailments that afflict Britain is by a relatively radical series of changes. And I think the onus is on people who argue that the status quo is superior to some of these changes to try and defend a system that just isn't working at the moment.